Hey guys, Sean Chandler here, and this is my spoiler review and discussion of Season 4, Episode 3 of The Flash, Luck Be a Lady. What I'm going to do is kind of walk through my general the plot line and my thought on the different elements that kind of happen in it. I'll give some general thoughts on the season thus far. That's kind of where we're heading with this. If you're watching later on, this was recorded live, so the first 10 minutes or so of this will be just kind of me giving my thoughts, and then as discussion leads, we'll see where things go in the latter half with some live discussion questions from people. But this first part will be kind of my discussion of things, walking through the episode, giving my opinions on things. It is spoiler-based, so I will be giving plot points. I'm recording this where the episode has not aired in certain time zones yet, or obviously if you DVR'd it or something like that, I'm not in the future, so you haven't watched it yet. You have been warned. With that said, I'm going to dive in and start talking about this episode. So this episode starts off kind of with the Thinker looking at this girl played by, let's see, what was her name? I've seen her from Mike and David Wedding Dates. Sugar Lynn Beard, who plays Hazard, and she's this unlucky girl who has all sorts of bad luck in this opening little segment, gets in a truck, or gets in a bus, and she's exposed to some stuff that, basically gives her powers. That's the obvious what happens on this show. They've had a new event causing new people to have metahuman powers. That's the setup for our episode and gives us a vibe, or an idea of, I guess a vibe actually ties in as an actual unintended pun for this season where things are headed. So in the episode, the idea is essentially she's now given incredible luck, but when she has good luck, other people have bad luck, and as she uses her powers, the worse luck people have around her. And it's a really fun setup for an episode. The actress they got, it has a lot of charm and fun to her, so just kind of her quirky personality makes it for a very enjoyable episode in and of itself, just to kind of have someone like that. My suspension of disbelief just can't go there on this one. I mean, it's sci-fi show, kind of, none of it's believable, all of it's ridiculous. You can't get hit by radiation and start running real fast. But at least there's a thought in that if you're exposed to certain things, it lets you do a superhuman thing, which is to say a human thing done at a super level. Luck, however, isn't a thing. It's not an actual quantity, it's like a description of statistical probability, and certain people seem to come out ahead of statistical probability, and certain people come behind statistical probability, and there's not like a mechanism by which if you're hit by anything that there's a thing that you could actually try and bend morph reality to make that happen. Some of you guys are chiming in the chat board saying, yeah, the scientific explanation is totally ludicrous. Right, there's literally no way to scientifically describe this sort of manipulation of time. But, so there's a side to me that can't just turn that off. It did kind of annoy me to an extent. But the episode itself, it gave a fun direction to go with things. Like, it was actually kind of like quirky and interesting to see something like this. And like, for example, as it plays out, the scene where Barry confronts her in the coffee shop, and as he's walking out, she's like, you can't do anything to stop me. And it starts just kind of panning around everything in the room that could go bad and be dangerous. And you're like, ooh. It actually kind of had some nice tension. That's good direction when they do things like that. So they had fun with an idea that is totally ludicrous and not based in any sort of reality whatsoever. And so then as it plays out, the situation, the big climax is she goes to the casinos as part of her master plan to make money. So she's drawing all the luck to her. So they've got to try and run some experiments to try and blast one little wave to knock the luck out of her so a plane doesn't crash. The great shot in here where the plane's flying and the bird gets sucked into the engine, and even birds are getting bad luck. That's where like this, how ludicrous this idea was. Like, I'm still saying it with like a big grin on my face because it was fun. Which at the latter half of this review, I'll talk about the season in general, but the idea that we're just having fun and smiling and doing quirky, weird stuff with the show again, I'm so on board with that. I'm a big fan of that side of what they're doing with this season, even if they're kind of going freak of the week, new meta accident, provides all these new guys and girls. we're having fun again. So some of the other plot lines going along in the episode, as you guys have been saying in the chat room since we got started, Wells is back. We got Wells returning, and there's a lot of clash with him and Cisco, kind of going back and forth, and we're kind of heading things. They patched things up. Looks like he might be sticking around for a little bit. I wasn't crazy about this particular Wells plotline because I didn't feel like we got some great, the Wells moments weren't as memorable as some of the more recent ones that have come to my mind, or the type of Wells moments that I like, but we got Wells back, so I don't want to say too much about that. So just to say that Wells is back. It wasn't the best Wells stuff from my perspective. Then the next plot line we got going on in this episode is that Barry and Iris are trying to find a wedding venue, and tied into our big theme, they're having bad luck trying to find a wedding venue. And I thought where they kind of went with some of this was just not good. The idea that Iris is like, here, meet me at this church, and they're having a funeral going on, and she's like, oh, we're having such bad luck, we'll just run up there and we'll have him kind of do the service for us, and we'll just get married right now. We'll just elope right now after a funeral. I know that they're trying to go from fun and quirk in some of this. You just kind of make Iris, as they've kind of been doing in all these episodes thus far, they're making Iris seem like a crazy person that's really unlikable. You go to a funeral, rush by the casket going, oh, sorry for your loss, just to run up to the guy that just officiated a funeral. And as someone that has officiated a funeral, I've officiated 3 different funerals in my lifetime. If someone ran up afterwards and then tried to get me to officiate their wedding, I've officiated like 6 weddings, I'd probably not the best context to say this, but even I'd probably punch you in the face in that context if you did something like that. That's so tasteless, and I know it's written kind of for jokes and for some things like that, but the way they, like, the direction they went with it, they're just making Iris seem so petty, so selfish. In all 3 of these episodes, Iris has not been written very well. Even in the quirky stuff, doesn't put her in a good light. Then, plot point you guys just mentioned in the comment board, Wally decides to sit this one out because he's sad about a girl, so then he decides at the end of the episode to head off in his own direction. As much as it kind of happened very suddenly in the episode, in the scheme of the show, when you're thinking about it, it was like, yeah, that probably makes sense. We probably don't need him around. I've kind of been saying this since the end of last season, that he just feels like kind of an extra character. I said I don't really want him to take over the show if Barry doesn't come back, because I don't think he has the charisma, the screen presence that makes me go, man, I want to watch this show because of Wally. Just the character himself isn't written as kind of like this cool, strong character. And then likewise, just in general, I've never really, like, Wally's a character just seems like a weak character. So the fact that they kind of wrote him out in a weak way just pretty suddenly feels kind of in line with everything else that they've kind of done with the Wally character. And finally, the one that you guys have been mentioning in the chat board, kind of the big reveal at the end of this episode that I don't think any of us were seeing coming except about 10 seconds before Joe saw it coming. So they're doing this whole kind of misdirect in the episode about the house falling apart, and this house is kind of, you know, it's our home on the show. That's kind of the home that we hang out in and people have been raised in. And so it's a kind of a character in its sense on the show, and they're talking about selling it, moving out of it, and then you get to that last little tag at the end of it, and she's like, you know, and you said this was a great place to raise a family. And as soon as she says that, I'm pretty sure everyone watching it is about 15 seconds ahead of Joe, and you're like, ooh, she's having a baby. And then it plays out, and, well, she's having a baby, and Joe is shocked by this, even though he had 10 seconds to figure it out, while all of us figured it out when it happened. But yeah, I didn't see that one coming. Interesting little direction to take things. That's fun writing right there, to do something we're actually not thinking about. And that if you're going to send Wally out, if you're going to kind of take some of these sorts of ideas and of a child in it, where it's have him leave, and then the next scene is, and he's got a new child coming, the idea of marriage, of leaving and cleaving, that they kind of go off and start a new family together with Barry, and his daughter's leaving, and in that episode where so much wedding in it, and you get him having another child, bunch of things like that that just kind of make for some interesting storytelling, interesting drama. for the right reasons. And so that's kind of the stuff where it's kind. I don't know. I liked a lot of that stuff. It was a fun episode. It was just an enjoyable, fun episode that even though I was like, really? What? Luck isn't a quality that you can like crank up on someone in any sort of meaningful sense. Beyond that, a fun episode. And if we're going to talk big picture about the season in general, I've really enjoyed the fact that we're fun. That's probably the biggest thing that like at the end of last season, I said, I hope they go fun next season. And my what I was wanting was some more kind of story arcs, but I was saying definitely don't do kind of, we've got another Savitar type villain that's a speedster that every episode is all about Savitar. Like, no, like let's give us a variety of villains, maybe some story arcs that are 3-4 episodes, but be fun. That's the big thing I said, and they're doing that. They're doing a lot of what I said. The main guy's not a speedster. That's a big plus for me. So a bunch of those things I really like. But the big criticism I've had thus far this season is the simple fact that they just so quickly moved past the cliffhanger last season. All right, so that's my take on this season thus far, and this episode thus far. If you want to throw some questions my way, I can start trying to tackle some of those as best I can. So in the comment section, one of you guys asked, why did I not do a live stream last week? It just didn't work out. I have kids, and so sometimes life gets crazy, and so I missed it last week. And there's a lot of TV shows right now, so I'm measuring a little bit back and forth. How many shows can I do? How can I do them that's actually practical? And so last week I kind of skipped out, and some of it was a little bit of an experiment to see if I skipped out in the week, if people would notice. And so I've had several people comment, hey, you missed last week. So here we are again. There's not a lot of people watching live right now, so at the same time that makes me go, all right, maybe there's not a live version of this isn't what there's a lot of demand for. So that's kind of the big kind of ingredients for me. Where I'm falling on things of I want to kind of do live, but I want there to be demand for live, and so I'm not going to. All right, we just got a question. Someone just asked, do I think that Iris is annoying right now? I would say Iris is unbelievably annoying right now. I think they've written her very poorly this season. And whether that's the first 2 episodes where she's mad at Barry for saving the universe, like, you just left me there. Fair point. He saved the universe, in which case you would go, it was unpleasant for me, but you don't do it as this finger pointing, you sacrificed yourself to save the universe, but what about me? Well, you would have died. Like, you would be dead if I hadn't done it. So I don't feel too bad for saving your life. I feel bad that you had a hard time, but I was locked up in the Speed Force going cuckoo for a while, so I don't feel too bad that you were left behind. And so just in general, that seemed like that was pretty poor writing. And then this episode, she's at a funeral trying to turn it into her wedding. She's surprised trying to elope Barry, which means she's getting married to this guy in the story with lots of friends that would care about it without them being there, just because she's frustrated about trying to book a wedding venue. That's selfish. So yeah, she's really annoying right now. All right, someone just asked, how do I think that they will handle the baby? I think in general, because Joe's a side character and he's got a lady friend in the mix, I don't know that Joe having a baby is a big direction changer for the show. It's not like on Arrow where, all right, now Oliver's got a kid and he's 10 years old. That like is a big dynamic shift for the show because the lead character suddenly has a baby, single parent. Whereas Joe having a kid, I just kind of feel like it just feels like that's a side character. It's like it'll add some flavor to things. It'll make some things a little bit interesting. But it doesn't drastically change things a whole lot. All right, someone just asked, do I think that Wally will be back or will be out for the rest of the season? I would assume he'll come back from time to time. They'll try and make him more of kind of a specialty character that it's like you miss him being gone, so let's bring him back and have a cool episode with him, and so that you actually appreciate him being there. Like the key thing they even said in the episode was, hey, there was like the world was in danger and I wasn't even around and nobody noticed. And that's true. I didn't notice. I was watching the episode and it did not occur to me that, didn't occur to me like at all that Wally wasn't there until they pointed it out to me that Wally wasn't there. And that kind of tells you everything you need to know about the character and his place and his gravitas that he brings to things, in that you don't notice when he's gone, and that's a really bad sign. That means he's kind of extra weight on the show. So I think they'll bring him back at points in time where he can bring weight to it, where it is like, hey, look who we've got. Oh man, we need two speedsters to battle this one. Now we have to. I think that's what they'll do with it, and that'll work better for him, and it'll work better for the show in general to do something along those lines. Someone asked in the comment section, when will I do my next Masters of Movie Trivia? I don't know. They just take a ton of time. That's my movie trivia show that I've done on my channel, or did back in April and May of this year. Did 4 episodes of a movie trivia show. And it was a ton of fun. It's just a ton of work, and it's hard to make them happen. It kind of, when you're trying to get all the footage of an hour footage from 4 different people, and you're talking about 30 gigs of stuff and just a ton of time editing it, so it kind of puts my channel on hold. And that's kind of where it's become kind of tough to do it. I was going to do one for October, was my plan, and was going to do a scary movie themed one and everything, but it didn't end up working out. I had some people in mind, and I'm still planning on doing that episode if as my next episode, when I do a next episode, if I do a next episode. But that's kind of the update on that. It's just very hard to do it. And when it's even tricky on a different level. When I did the first episode, I had 1/3 as many subscribers as I do now, and so then I'm a lot more established as kind of what my channel does and who watches it. And so maybe that would be a reason to definitely do it, because it would be more exciting and it would get more momentum. One of the reasons I didn't keep doing it is because it didn't get enough momentum and excitement. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll try another one. But of the things to work on, it's just kind of difficult to justify putting as much time into that one for the results that it gets. Russell Wilson asks, do you think there will be a twist with Joe's baby? Maybe use it to introduce Bart somehow. The nature of these Arrowverse shows is that they definitely like their big twists. They definitely like to have, if you're going to add a baby in, there's a reason that you're adding a baby in. So as much as I just said that Joe having a kid doesn't drastically change things a whole bunch, I think if you get Joe having a kid, the sort of thing that they will do is put a big twist on that, and then that will go in some direction. So I guess I'm just saying both things in that, yeah, it could be a big, gigantic twist. If they just go in the direction Joe has a kid, I think it'll be, hey, Joe's got a kid. If they throw some sort of twist in there, and especially when you got a world with time universes and speed forces and different Earths and things like that, there's a TV show from 15 years ago called Angel. Someone had a baby, and then some stuff happened with the baby, so you get to see, like, in a very short period of time, suddenly it's older, and there's some fun things you could experiment with that with this show and kind of mess around with a few things. And there's a lot of twists and exciting things that could potentially happen with Joe's kid. I just have no clue where they're going, because that wasn't on any of our radars. Like, hey, I bet Joe's going to have another kid at the end of this episode. Like, that's not what any of us were thinking. And then we got there and we're like, oh, wow. I have no idea what that means. So they didn't really give us an idea at all. So, you know, it's just a plot point they put out there, which almost certainly is going to have some significance. But with what we know right now, I do not have any guesses as to what that would be. All right. Any more questions for me? Thoughts? If so, I can keep going a little bit, or I can shut things down at just around 20 minutes. So depending on how many views this video gets, as I said, right now we haven't had too many people in the stream, so I'm not like doing live is a little bit more stressful on my end, so I'm not terribly inclined to keep doing it if people aren't watching. So I'm open to if people want me to keep doing it, but at the moment looking a little bit skeptical just because of the number of interactions, unfortunately. But if people watch the videos, I'll keep reviewing it. So we will see what will happen. That one kid gamer, he said, read my theory. The problem is I'm on my phone as I'm doing a lot of this stuff, and I basically, your comments only appear on my screen for about 5 seconds. I don't have the chat board in front of me, and if I did, I'd be doing this, not looking over here. So I can't actually see what your theory is, unfortunately. And if you wrote kind of a longer theory, I'd read the first 2 sentences, and then it would fade off my screen, and so I wouldn't be able to see it. That's just kind of the way these work, while I'm able to somewhat kind of look in the right direction while actually reading some of your comments. Just if you want a little bit of flip side of how some of this live stuff is done, that's what it looks like. All right, with that said, I certainly plan on talking about more Arrowverse shows in the future, so if you like my opinions on it, please consider subscribing. James Carpenter said, what should I have for dinner? I'm going to go with Chinese food. Chinese food is probably your best direction. You're going to want to go with steamed rice. You got to use chopsticks to eat them, to eat the rice. That's the show of a real sign of if you know what you're doing, is if you can eat them. Eat steamed rice with chopsticks. I can, so I want you to learn to as well. So that's James Way. My recommendation is Chinese food, eating only with chopsticks, steamed rice. And with that said, if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, but the key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies and TV. I want to talk about them with you. Hi, B-Wise. Thanks for tuning in just as I'm actually shutting things down. Actually, I got one more question, apparently. Steve Menendez, do you think that Barry's actually the Reverse Flash? Not thus far. They haven't given me any hints to think that he's the Reverse Flash, so I'm not inclined to think that at the moment. If they give us some hints of some behavior that's negative, of some things like that, perhaps I'll change my mind. But at the moment, I have to see strong hints before I start jumping to theories, because there's all kinds of theories you could go with all of this. So there you go. There's some of my thoughts on all of that. There's none of the things I've been picking up. I don't follow a lot of the conspiracy theories and theories on all of it, just for the simple fact of the matter of I like to just enjoy what happens and see it as it kind of unfolds. Maybe have some guesses in my head as you guys ask me questions, but I don't try and like study all of it to try and crack the code of where the show's going. So that's kind of where I kind of come from on these things. All right, with that said, thank you guys for watching.